So this session is about how do we solve the problem of constantly adding data to our tables when we run our Cypress tests. So you'll probably have encountered some scenario so far where by running your Cypress tests, you see a lot of data just keeps getting added to the table, right, again and again, because you submit the form and your application takes that data, and using Sequelize, it then makes an insert statement and adds that row to the table and constantly does it. Now, this is a problem because we want to be able to always assert with confidence that the expected data shows on the page in a test like this. So this test says we're going to navigate to the path/cats, and then we're going to type into those input fields, submit the form, and then we should see the data that we've just inputted into our table displayed on the page. We want to be able to, when we click that button, there'll be something that happens where it brings us back to a page that has the data on the page. And so you can see that happening in the Cypress test. All right, we add data down here into these input fields, and we're going to hit the create cat, and we're going to see it on the page. But it also shows all the current data as well, and so we just keep adding and adding data to the table, which is not good. All right, we only want to be able to assert that the last one that we've added is the only one that appears on the page. If a test already has data in the table before it runs, unintentionally, it means that every time we run this test, there'll be different things in the table. All right, we can't always guarantee the test if there's random data already in the table. So we should always make sure our tests are run from a pristine state, all right, entirely empty apart from the things that we need. And we go through that setup process for each individual test. So the first step is always to truncate our tables. And we can do this manually. I go to my database and truncate the table. Let's have a look at what's in it first. You can see there's a few rows here. If I truncate my table, I can do this manually, go through again, and you can see that only the data that I've inputted or submitted through my form is now shown on the page, which is a good test. It's what I want to see. So I can do this manually every time I run it, go back, truncate the table, and then run my test again. But we want to automate this process. So let's just quickly visualize what the manual process looks like. So we have, we've got our Cypress running. All right, Cypress is this application here. It's running on its own server, and it can interact with another application. All right, we're also running our Node app, or Express app. Right, so this, for example, would be the Cats app or the Bookmark Manager app. You run Cypress, and it interacts with the page, etc. Clicks on buttons, inputs into text boxes, things like that. Our Node app is connected to a database. And we can connect to our database also directly using our command line interface. All right, so this down here is what I just did by manually typing into here and going truncate table. So I access my database directly to get it ready so that when Cypress navigates to, say for example, /cats, when my Node app goes into the database and fetches it out, it's fetching out the right data, for example. All right. What we're going to do, rather than have this manual process here, we want to automate it. So we want to have it this way. Right, we want Cypress to interact with our database. So Cypress, before you run this test, update the database to a different state, i.e. truncate the tables, and then execute your test. All right. So we're going to go from this interaction to the Cypress interaction. All right. So we don't have to. This is the manual part that I just demonstrated, and we want it to be automated. All right. So let's see how we can do this. So I'm going to use a Cypress task. And in order to be able to use a Cypress task, I've got to register it. So this is the task name. And I'm going to register it in the plugins directory here. So I'm going to specifically target the task event. So by using on, this is part of Cypress saying that if you want to hook into different events for Cypress, you can do so by using on and then the type of event. And this is the type of event that I want to is the task event, so that I have access to cy.task, and I give it a task name. In order to execute a specific task, I add the task here as a method accordingly, and it always has to return null. And this is where I'm going to execute my task. All right. So here I'm going to keep things quite compartmentalized. So I'm going to invoke a method, and I'm going to take this as from a require from out 1, 2 directories into a test directory, for example, and let's give it create cat.js. Okay. Let's do a console log statement so we can get visual clarification when this actually runs. Running create cat. I realised I'm already thinking about the second task that I have. So let's just change this, because this is task truncate tables. Let's say truncate tables. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Truncate tables. Let's keep it like that. Truncate tables. Let's just update all of this. Okay, so that looks a little bit more straightforward what we're trying to do, which is just make sure we truncate our tables. Now I need to create a new folder called test. In this test directory, I'm going to create a JavaScript file called truncate tables. And here is where I write a function. Let's just actually say export a function that uses sequelize to truncate tables. So let us const truncate table is a function. I'm going to module.exports my function, and here is where I need access to my sequelize, so I have to import it from somewhere. So const, let's say something like require, and then we're going to go out one level into models, and that should be enough. And here is where I want to do something like models, and then this is my cat.destroy, and how do I truncate tables? Let's go back to here. Can I truncate true? Truncate model, await, there's got to be await. Let's do a sync function that then destroys the table, truncates it. I have to make sure that I've set up my environment variables, so I've got to do something like, how do I do it? I do something like require.env. And is there anything else that I need to do? Truncate tables just goes ahead and truncates it. So let's see how far I've got with my Cypress test. So let me go back to my Cypress. Let's quit you and start it up again. Every time you change anything in the Cypress server, you've got to make sure you quit and restart it. So it picks up the new configuration. Oops, let's have a look. Something in my plugin file. Yeah, you need to close one of those. Okay, cats. Truncate tables is not a function, so let's just make sure that we actually require. That'd be useful. Cool. So every time I run it, it truncates the table. So now I have a consistent test that gives me a good amount of confidence that what I submit in my form is the data that then appears on the page. So the next part of this was to then do this again, but with a second task to get this to work. All right, so this test here, I just comment this task out because I haven't written it yet, means that I don't use my form to submit the data. I just simply expect there to be data in my table so that when I navigate to /cats, it will show me the data that's already there. So this test is going to be currently failing. All right, because there's no data on the page. So I want to manually add data to my table, and I'm going to use a task for this. So the task I want to create is task create cat. So I'm going to do the same thing here. We're going to add a method here and do something like console.log running create cat can't, okay, create cat, that's thank you, and let's return null. We're going to do the same thing by requiring it, create cat and create cat can't. All right, lovely, fat fingers. Task, okay, so then let's add a create cat.js. I'm going to copy this to insert a record. So yes, 32 lines. We're going to call this create cat and update this model, and we're going to do a create. And here it's going to be something like name. I guess we can just take that. So slow. Name, breed, owner, test breed, So this will create an insert into my table with that data, and I've added it here. My test there. So let's go ahead and restart my server so it loads the new tasks. And what have I done? I have something missing. On task create. Here you start. You are good. You're good. You're good. You're good. Require const create cat as a require. So you should all be fine. Create cat. Oh, there's something happening here. Create cat line 9. Oh, missing. Boom. Read the error message. Okay, so first test is still passing. Go ahead and truncates the table, adds the data, submits it, sees on the page, and I now see it on the page. So I've added two different tasks, that one of which will truncate my tables, and the second one will insert manually data into my table. And it's always going to be much quicker to add data to the table directly rather than use that form to submit the data that you need, because sometimes you'll need not just one record on a table but several records in a table to set up your test so that you want it, so it's ready for an assertion, some expected behavior of your application. So rather than go through and always use Cypress to click on the input fields, get the input fields, type, click, things like that, just add the data you need directly in the test. So you do your test setup. Remember the 3 phases in the test: setup, you execute some code, and then you assert. And we can do any of the test setup like this as necessary in a database using custom tasks that interact with the database accordingly. Cool. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks for watching.